turning point in my life was that, like I said, my dad had always been very faithful to the point that I think there's a lot of things that, maybe things could have been done differently as far as my family was concerned. That maybe, we never even went on vacations. We didn't really do a whole lot of anything because, we weren't wealthy, of course, but there was almost this strange separation, the us and them thing. There was this, we're here and this is how we are, and we would go to like maybe the county fair or something like that, the Hazard County Fair or something, but we didn't really go out a lot of places. And but my dad was very strong in his convictions, very strong in his faith. And even though I didn't agree with a lot of it, again, there's never been a point in my life where I could say I didn't believe in God. But although I may not have agreed with how he felt the person of God was, or who he thought the person of God was, or how the relationship was supposed to be there, I admired how strongly, the older I got, I admired how strongly he believed in what he believed. And, and the faith that he had in God, I saw miraculous things as a kid. I saw people get healed. I saw people get delivered from horrendous demonic strongholds. I saw that stuff and I could never deny it. And then, when I was 16, my dad started getting sick, started losing blood, and they couldn't figure out where the blood was going to. And by Thanksgiving of that year, they discovered my dad's liver. There were some problems with the enzymes in his liver. By Christmas, he'd already been in and out of the hospital probably 10 times, and they found out he had cirrhosis. They started talking about maybe liver transplants, maybe this, maybe that. And by, moving into early 2004, at 17 by this point, I was carrying my dad to the bathroom. I was, taking care of, helping, feed my dad. It was a lot on my mom, and I think it really messed with her emotionally, seeing my dad, because he was always the strong guy. The guy had a stroke one time while we were driving, and just kind of pulled over the road, was slightly uncomfortable for a few minutes, and then it's like, I'm not feeling too good. We go to the hospital, like, you've had a stroke. Like, he could handle something like that. It was debilitating and had no real, after effects. But at 61, in January 2004, my dad died from cirrhosis, complications from cirrhosis. And that was the point that I remember very vividly, just screaming at the sky. Again, there's been misconceptions among people who know me that thought I didn't believe in God or I hated God. I was very angry with God. I still had a reverent fear of God, but I was in no way trying to hide the fact that I was extremely angry with God, and I was confused more than anything. I had people on one hand telling me, it was just God's will. It was just when it's your time to go. And I'm like, okay, so God will let somebody get that debilitated that quickly, and become that sick, and then die at 61. Who believed nothing more than God was a healer, and that God was a provider, and those kinds of things. So again, sadly, basing who I believe God to be on people who talked about God and people who were in the church, I couldn't find any goodness in that. I couldn't find anything in that. And again, I still would pray from time to time, and I could even say there were times I still felt the presence of the Lord in certain situations, but I chose not to put myself in a position to feel that because I was angry. I had questions that I didn't feel like He could give any sort of rational response to. And then from that point, there were even people that were in ministry with my dad that came to me and showed me some pictures. I was into special effects makeup at the time. That's what I wanted to do out of high school. I was really into special effects makeup, and I had a guy who we really looked up to come to me after my dad had died. and had pictures printed out of special effects makeup I'd done, one of which was a picture of me between my mom and dad with zombie makeup on. He's like, this kind of stuff, this can bring stuff into your house. This could brought a lot of stuff against your family, and never coming out and saying it, but kind of making me feel like, we kind of believe because you were into this might be why I have a dad. I mean, not say it in that way, but to a 17-year-old who's already angry and already doesn't understand what's going on from a spiritual standpoint, to have somebody that you've looked up to that long come and tell you something like that, you're like, okay, God, you stay where you're at, and I'm going to stay where I'm at, because this isn't going to work between me. I mean, really, to a point of maybe someday I'll get to a point right before death, and hopefully I'll be one of those people that can get in at the last minute. But right now, if that's how it is, then I just don't want anything to do with it. So I don't blame any of those people. Now, for years I did, and I had a lot of, same thing with the folks in the church that said that stuff. I had a lot of animosity and hard feelings. Most of those people, in one form or another, have either made it a point to come to me and apologize, or maybe not so much apologize, tell me how proud they are of me now. And some of the folks that did some of that stuff are dead. So it's life was getting to be a really weird contrast by the time I was in high school. Anytime I think you lose somebody that close, family or a friend or whatever, it really puts mortality into perspective. And with that comes the spiritual side. I'm going to go somewhere when I die. I don't believe we're here I don't believe we're just the highest form of animal intelligence. I believe there's more to this. And when I got into high school, some of the guys I was with played music and stuff too, and I started playing music and was really into girls. I was always really into girls, but in high school you can be a little more open about that. But I got into playing music more, and then getting out of school with music comes people that drink and smoke pot and those kinds of things. And I didn't really do that a whole lot at first. I was the kind of kid that I was the head of our anti-tobacco campaign at the high school that I went to the most. I went to for the longest period. So I was a kid, I'm never going to do anything like that. But, after my dad died and stuff, I started doing little things here and there. And again, music people are usually people who enjoy catching a buzz. So by the time I was 18 or so, I was experimenting pretty hard with mostly just alcohol and weed at that point. But at some time, like around my later teens, moving into like my early 20s, 18, 19, around through there, starting to play shows and that kind of thing more, getting exposed to other drugs. I did a concert for a beauty pageant that's kind of, we did a couple songs of the beauty pageant, and it was the first time I'd ever really I'd taken a bunch of muscle relaxers beforehand that are pretty notorious for their pretty close to narcotic effects. I think they're actually off the market now. But and that was the first time I'd ever performed, I guess you could say, under the influence of something. I was like, wow, this is what I've looked for my whole life. That big hole that I'd felt, especially since my dad had passed away. Like, this is it. This is all I needed. And I still stuck mostly with alcohol and stuff. But by the time my wife and I got married, I met my wife, and she and I got married. She'd already been exposed to narcotics at an early age because it was kind of the thing. The background she came from is that, you're sick, you go to the doctor, you get pills for it. If you're depressed, you go to the doctor, you get pills for it. If you have anxiety, you go to the doctor, you get pills for it. To a certain point, that if you feel bad, you go to the doctor, you get pills for it. If you're just not happy that day, you go to the doctor, you get pills for it. Anybody that knows that knows this part of the state, or I guess this part of the country, knows that there was a period of time where that was not hard to do. The first couple of years of our marriage were great. There was a lot of parties. But my son was born the first couple of years there. I started getting a little more notoriety playing music, and got to play bigger places and the more illicit drugs that come with that kind of thing. And then after I kind of laid back from that for a little while, got in a car accident in guess it was 2009. No, it was 2010, early part of 2010. And instantly I was like, man, this is how people, I'd heard all the stories, this is how you get pain medication. And I'd done enough of that at that point to know that was something that I enjoyed, and went and did that. And then one day we were getting ready to go down the road to my wife's grandma's, and I'd done I don't know how much that morning, but I got in the car and started to put the key in the ignition, had a grand mal seizure. I guess that was the first, I guess you'd say, overdose that I experienced. But I played it off and was even so good. And one of the most amazing things, I won't say amazing, one of the most astonishing things about drug people, as opposed to the people you think of on the side of the street, even though a lot of them at some point were just drug people, I guess you could say, that they're normally pretty smart people, but with that are smart enough to be able to manipulate people pretty well, and to lie and manipulate doctors. And I'll say in some of those instances the doctors had to kind of know what was up, but a few years go by, a couple decent jobs here and there, get laid off from a job that I really, really loved, and that's when things really started spiraling out of control. I wasn't working, so I didn't have, even though the place I was working, it was pretty much a pharmacy a lot of times, but I really loved the job. I stayed pretty level-headed most of the time that I was there. But the addiction that I built up working there, making decent money, being able to get things like OxyContin and ecstasy, stuff like that, as easily as I could, even down to some of the stuff with like the legal weed and bath salts and stuff. It was so easy to get. I was making enough money that I could do whatever. If I got too messed up on something, we'd see the headlines about how bad the bath salts were. I'd just make sure to drink a bunch of whiskey behind it so I'd go to sleep. And it was riding a really dangerous line that definitely should have killed me. But when I lost that job and I was out of work, one of the things that doesn't happen when you're getting unemployment and just trying to take care of wife and kids is you don't get to buy drugs like you used to. So at that time there was an alternative, and there still is, that was supposed to help you get off drugs, and it kept you from experiencing withdrawal effects. And within a year of moving to a different state and back, that just back and forth doing this and that, and keeping up a good front, and taking this drug that was going to help me get off other drugs, was completely addicted to the other drug. And this thing that was supposed to help me get straightened out, I was far worse because of, and still drinking and stuff here and there. During all this times, these crazy parties and stuff, I'd gotten really wild a few times. Not really violently, but a lot of the things I did that should have destroyed my marriage. And the weight of that started bearing down on me. I'm going to have to come clean, or I'm going to live with this and hope that right before I die I can come clean on it. I still had, I guess, an ethical heart, although it was a very black one. But I'd gotten a job working at a resort. It was a minimum wage thing, and it was basically just to barely get by. And during that, I got introduced to some heavier drugs. And 2013, the early part of that year, my entire world just collapsed in on itself. I got completely blown out of my mind. I don't even remember all on what, because by this point I got to the point where I wanted to mix everything I could. I was never cool. I was never just the guy that wanted to do this, or the guy that just did paint, but whatever. I wanted to do all of it at once because I really enjoyed being completely, gone. I didn't have to worry about anything. I didn't have to feel bad about anything. And I ended up one night, apparently, again, don't know what all I was on, but got really violent, not towards anybody, but just started destroying stuff and set a fire in the living room of the house we were living at the time. And the guy I played music with for years was like, man, we had to leave. And my wife had left. She even got a domestic violence petition, not because I'd done anything to her directly, but because that was a side of me that nobody had seen. And I kept a lot of pent-up anger for years. I never tried to deal with any of the hurt from my dad dying, really, other than getting drunk and listening to country music and crying about it. I didn't really try to work through that or to be healed from that, because every time I would think about something even remotely close to healing, I remember how hurt I was from the people who taught about healing my whole life. And within a couple of months of that whole ordeal, we were homeless. And we decided we were going to let my in-laws take care of my kids. And we would just do what we could. We'd go stay, somebody be awesome enough to let us stay with them for a little while. And before you know it, we had done something to, we'd gotten, both of us by this point had spiraled totally out of control. And we would both, we'd end up getting in a big fight or something at somebody's house. And, something would go wrong and, you guys were too loud or whatnot. And by the winter 2013 going into 2014, we were sleeping in we went to the homeless shelter a couple of times and gotten kicked out of there. We tried to stay with some friends, and again, we would end up causing a problem and getting kicked out. That winter, we ended up sleeping in a bathroom at a park, at the local park. And I was like, wow, this is low. This is as low as it gets. We'd go and stay with somebody here or there for a while, and she and I would do okay, and then one of us would find a way to get a prescription for something or get some money round up, and one good night of like nerve pills and whiskey, and we were split up again, both of us covered in cuts and bruises. And I called my wife after she'd left, and I was like, I've been talking to God today. And she was raised in church too, and her dad was a preacher, and she always had a love for God, and I'm convinced to this day, if not for people like my mom and my wife, I would not be alive. There were, far less any of the stuff that the Lord's enabled me to do now, but I wouldn't even be breathing if it weren't for those people. But, she was very apprehensive still. She came back, and the crazy thing about it was we went immediately to the clinic to get that stuff, and of course everything was great. I promised I wouldn't drink anymore, and this and that, and then we get the news that the clinic we were going to was just shutting down. The doctor was like, I'm going to write everybody however much, to last you a little while, and that's it. Good luck and Godspeed, I guess. We dealt okay with that at first. And then alcohol came back into play because, starting to come off of that, the withdrawals were far worse than the drugs that it was supposed to be helping everyone. And we got kicked out of the place we were living at there. We went to stay with a friend for a while, caused a bunch of problems there, got kicked out of there. We went to stay at the homeless shelter. No sooner than we went there, went and got there, like, when you get your monthly medications, you need to bring them to us so we can take care of them for you. I ate like 20 of the nerve pills that I got, thinking they wouldn't notice that. They noticed that. They definitely count those kinds of things. So we got kicked out that day, and that started us living in a hotel. My wife's grandma, who, probably wouldn't be considered saintly by anybody else's means, but was absolutely the hand of God in our life so many times. She paid for us to stay in a hotel for like over a month. But I worked at the gas station across the road, and ended up getting in trouble at my job there. And I thought, okay, I guess we're headed back to McDowell because there's nowhere else to go at this point. We go to stay with my mom, and started actually doing a little better. Still would do things here and there, but my mom was going to church at the time. We ended up going with her a few times, and it was pretty cool. Really started keeping myself kind of straight, and talking to the Lord more and trying, reading the Word. But I can't say trying, because I feel like anytime anybody says try in a sentence, it's just making an excuse for something that they didn't do and had every bit of the ability to do. So I read the Word more, didn't get in the Word as much as I should have. Still holding a lot of those traditional things. I kind of almost was at a point there when I was coming out of the bondage of addiction and depression and anxiety and going straight into the bondage of religion. I instantly started changing the way I dressed, and I only did songs out of hymnals. Not that there's anything wrong with hymnals, but I was doing it because that's what you do. And people were still telling, there were some lies that were being told, and okay, just taking that stuff in stride, and people saying, oh, that's what happens when you try to live right. The devil fights you. But nobody really told me how I could fight back, or that I didn't have to fight at all, but I was already positioned in victory, and everything that I was doing was from there. I didn't get told any of that stuff. We had people that were calling CPS saying that we were doing this and that to our babies. And, we only had the one that was living with us at the time. She was a baby, and the workers were doing there's absolutely nothing wrong here. Like, is there anybody that would have any reason to say anything about you? And I was like, I don't think so. My big thing had been restoring bridges and, reaching out to people and really trying. Again, I don't blame anybody but me for not getting to that point of, because I believe firmly that when he is sought, when the equation is draw near to him, he draws near to you. It's that simple. But again, I was trying to do that through the that weird addled connection of the tradition that I had. I was trying to be my dad. I was trying to be that, you know what I mean? I was trying to do that just because I figured, he did it. That's how you do it. That's just how it is. And was even weary of still some of the more modern things that were going on in churches because it wasn't, I was becoming that person. Again, not that anybody was bad for what they believe. I believe if you feel conviction about something, I'm not gonna fight with you on that. If you really feel strongly about that, then if me staying out of your life will keep you from being conflicted, I will. And I think that's that should be it. But I was getting that point of my wife's like, who's this? I'm like, no, I don't know how I feel about that, And again, there were attacks coming on all fronts. We were hoping to try to work it to get where other two kids could be coming back to live with us permanently and that kind of thing. And it's like, man, every time we turned around. And then the fall of that year, my stepbrother got really, God love him, he'd been in an accident, and he'd been prescribed some things that someone with his tendencies probably shouldn't have gotten. But because of some circumstances surrounding there, he ended up crashing an ATV and dying. And he was living with us at the time. And it was like, here's that mortality thing again, now it's getting real. I'm like, God, I feel like we're doing the right things. And I don't feel like I'm seeing any of that stuff that we're supposed to be seeing. I didn't feel very victorious. I didn't feel like much of an overcomer. I didn't feel that I could do all things by any means. And just kind of stopped going to church. I'm like, well, I kept getting confronted with this and that. And before too long, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do my own thing. And that's how that's going to work out.